the physical horrors of Camorra behind them. A long and arduous journey possible only with the help of a Xenos guide lay ahead for the rogue trader and her party. From one strange destination to the next, through unknowable environments, the mere sight of which could drive one to madness. Despite the challenges, they managed to escape the labyrinthian webway and find their way back home.
Well, your ladyship, ask away. I'll tell it like it is. I'm not going to try to wriggle out of it. We knew each other once. He helped me make the move to the Expanse and establish my first connections. But that's an old story I prefer not to poke at if I can help it. Things are good in my life now, and I don't need mercy. So what do you want to hear, Shireen? A children's tale about a beautiful princess? A ballad about a queen of thieves? How about a new story, Shireen? Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived on a sand-covered lump of rock, and the core of that rock contained untold riches for servants of the Imperium. The girl scraped out those riches with her little hands, breaking her back and coughing up her lungs, on behalf of people who had never clapped eyes upon her, and who would never know her name. She did this every day until she turned 16, and then... Then his servants came and drafted the girl into the 19th Ifrit Regiment. Can you imagine? Of course, the regiment was wiped out on its first sortie. But the girl survived. The Exalted One protects. So what was next? Years serving in the Astra Militarum, just a shitload of hard labor, and fighting, and deals, and shady connections, and new opportunities. But everything in this world ends sooner or later, Shireen. The now not-so-little girl went and fell in with the Kasbalika. She saved up a little gold, and she even indulged in excess from time to time, until living the good life almost cost the little girl her head after her patrons got caught in an internal investigation between the Officio Prefectus and Departamento Munitorum. So the girl ran as fast as her little legs could carry her, until her eyes and the beams of fortune brought her to the Expanse. A shitty story, all things considered, Shireen. Corporal Haydari reporting for duty, ma'am. I've had enough of the Astra Militarum shit to last a lifetime, Shireen. And my body's collected enough souvenirs from run-ins with Xenos and heretics to last 2 lifetimes. Except when it comes to the Guard, there's no such thing as used to be. That wretched life sank its claws into me good. But that also means I remember what it's like to be a small, shaking, insignificant pawn. And that's why I appreciate what I have now, all the more. It was orcs. Not everything I say is a lie, Shireen. You know, Shireen, I could still be bouncing around from one world to another, holed up on tired old ships with only venal grunts for company, if I hadn't decided I wanted more for my life. I accepted a shipment from the Kasbalika of certain chemicals. You know, for carnal pleasures and the like. Some bigwig was throwing a party to celebrate his 5th decade in the service. And that's when I got the attention of the newly arrived commissar. I was rummaging through the pockets of Astra Militarum with one hand and shuffling the Kasbalican cargo with the other. You can imagine what would have happened to my head had the commissar not started with my higher-ranked patrons. What? You think it's difficult? Once me and my fellow guardsmen snuck into the upper city in search of a good watering hole, where the high and mighty of that world congregated. Another time, our regiment was sent to defend the tallest spires on a hive world, and I had an epiphany. I saw how the other half lives, and by half, I mean the ones born with a diamond spoon in their mouth, instead of an entrenching shovel rammed up their arse. My eyes were open to the truth, Shireen. The Imperium is full of opportunities, even for people like myself. The trick is knowing whose palms to grease, whose boots to lick, whose throat to squeeze, and whose arses to kick. I was very popular with everyone in the Guard Command, you see. I'd procure things for them, whatever they wanted. And so the Kasbalika took notice. Whoop the never mind. Are you worried I'm going to start spitting on the deck and shriveling your officers' ears with my foul tongue? Don't be, Shireen. I much prefer being seen as a princess rather than a deserter. I'll continue to play the part in front of the others, but you wanted to talk frankly, so I've dropped the act. Sir, yes, sir, your ladyship, Shireen. I'll be here, all primed and ready to go.
A new challenge for you.
Lord Captain. Lord Captain.
Rogue trader, what disputation will you honor Nuncius and me with today? I have chosen to systematize the experience I gained and make use of it. Tavantius, for all his worthlessness, demonstrated several interesting techniques of vivisection, organ separation, and tissue splicing in his experiments on me. I believe I can replicate and even improve upon them. Little by little, this rational processing of my experiences of torture will allow me to recover from the shock inflicted upon my mind. Yes, it is long past time. I only ask for the privilege of privacy. This admission is difficult for me to make, and I can confide only in you.
Domin. May the Undying One shroud your footsteps from the faithless.
The Dark City released us from its thorny embrace. The wounds of the body will heal. But what about the wounds of the soul? Cruderach fell, and its demise shattered the fragile lives of countless children of Osirian. Scattered across this part of the galaxy, hounded by the monkey, pursued by the Dark Cousins, imprisoned by the servants of She Who Thirsts. Hatred is strangling me like a snake, and fear is coursing through my body like a burning poison. For the path I chose is leading me down the roads of failure. I can neither hold back my grief nor rein in my anger. And yet, I am powerless to stray from my path. Pay no heed to my fleeting wrath, Elantark. When the will slips away, the soul trembles with rampant emotions. But I will resign my heart to meekness, for there is no other way a marked outcast can help their fellow Eldari wandering in the dark. I have no need for your sympathy, Elantark. Besides, neither Monkey nor my dark kin found the decaying remnants of Cruderach. Perhaps all is not lost. Perhaps we may yet bring back what has been taken. I found myself in the Dark City after following the twisted roads of truth and lies. And although the truth blossomed like an ugly bud, and scratched my soul with its thorns, I did find the answers to my questions. Those who come back from the dark of the webway will never be the same. But it is we who change while the surrounding world remains imminent. This thought gives me strength. Clendil chose to stay on the Lilithon together with Muaran and the rest of our kinsmen. Perhaps it is for the best. The stars in this part of the galaxy are hostile to the children of Osirian. On the trail of a monkey called Caligos Winterscale, even a worm may harm a wounded tiger by bringing infection into an open wound. And the wounds of my people have been bleeding ever since Cruderach's demise. The spirits of my kin need a poultice, a hope, not the executioner's sword already poised to fall. You may try.
The Omniscient knows all, comprehends all. May your labors be effective and fruitful.
I had no intention of ending my days playing the role of meat in the arena. And then you blithely offered me an alliance after what I'd done to you. Why? That is true. But I'm not merely a hireling. It is strange you did not consider that when you offered me an alliance. But it does not matter. Ask your questions. I will decide which is worthy of an answer. The Drakon is the first among the blades of the Cabal of the Reaving Tempest, and the Drukhari who stands but one rung below the Archon. The Drakon leads raids and wages wars against other Cabals, keeps the arrogant true-born and half-born upstarts at bay, and has the pick of any opponent in any battle. Irimaris used to have others in her inner circle, but I ensured that they all disappeared one by one, and that their successors were too terrified to take their place. That was when my sister engaged an incubi order to serve as her bodyguards. Incubi do not respond to fear or bribes. Must there be another reason beyond survival and ambition? Camorra does not tolerate weakness. Camorra respects only strength and cunning. Either you climb upward on the corpses of your enemies, or you become one of the steps underfoot. Keep your arrogance in check. Irimaris was clever and deadly, and if I had underestimated her abilities and strength, I would have been food for the Eogunns long ago. The very fact that she surpassed me speaks for itself. I refused to give her cause to cast me out as a traitor. No, our rivalry, our little game that ran since our birth, took time. And another thing, when you're at the top, you need something to stave off boredom. This game amused us and terrorized the rest of the Cabal. The Cabal of the Black Heart is the most ancient of all the Cabals, and the largest. It casts a shadow over all Camorra, and when the Black Heart strikes, you submit or you die. The Reaving Tempest was not prepared to perish, so when the Black Heart's shadow stretched as far as us, Irimeris' predecessors chose to bend the knee and become their vassals. Irimeris never liked the Cabal's subordinate position. Her words, and sometimes her actions, directed against the Black Heart, prompted whispers of discontent and fear among those who served her. I was not willing to renounce the protection of Astrobyal Vekt's own Cabal. If I had succeeded in overthrowing Irimeris with Nazrakay's aid, many within the Reaving Tempest would have supported me. Tavantius was Irimeris' ally, not mine. The Reaving Tempest is his patron, and patron also to the witches of the arena. I have had cause to seek out his artistry several times, and each time with difficulty. Of late, he's been gone from Camorra more often than he's been in it. He was probably in one of his lairs where he hides his other experiments and creations. After Tavantius quarreled with the witches and was stripped of the Cabal's protection, his havens in Camorra were turned into a deadly trap. I imagine they've been ransacked and destroyed by now. His other hideouts may be somewhere in the tangle of the webway, or in real space. But that last possibility is madness even for a homunculus. When the grotesque of a rival Cabal ripped my arm off at the shoulder, when I needed a substance to wring the truth out of you in the Obsidian Court, when I had personal desires that only a master of flesh could satisfy. You are just dying to know, aren't you? It was a punishment. One of my raids was not as successful as it should have been, and Irimeris ordered Tavantius to forcibly implant the knowledge of the repulsive monkey language into my mind, supposedly so that I could at least benefit the Cabal by coaxing the monkey into their cages. 5 days I spent under a cerebral burner in the Spire's main hall, to the delight of Irimeris' entourage. I dislocated every joint, struggling in agony against my shackles. But I would endure it all again to expel this poison from my head. An amusing example of a primitive mind. Any Drukhari towers over any monkey, and we do not conceal our attitude to livestock, but my Kabbalite kin. Every one of them should be treated with caution, and those who have already demonstrated their power and might are a deadly threat in their own right. I do not revel in submission. I accept things as they are. And I wait until a point of weakness reveals itself and calls to my blade. Eviscerator of Illiridas, Blaze of the Barkag Kingdom, and Slayer of Corocius the Pale. Illiridas was a world inhabited by our distant Eldari cousins, until I led a reaping raid there. The Barkag Kingdom was a separate cluster on the fringes of Camorra before it went to war with the Reaving Tempest, and by the time I left, I was wading through the blood of its inhabitants. And lastly, Corocius the Pale. He was an ancient homunculus who betrayed the Aziriash at the behest of another Cabal. That was not a military victory, but a personal one. In his attempts to make himself invincible, Corocius had sown inside himself the deadliest creatures from the depths of Camorra. It did not save him. I cut out every one of his 8 hearts and sent them to his former coven as a warning to the rest. It is a caste in Camorra. Noble Drukhari born under certain circumstances. Their cradle before birth was not an amniotic gestational tube, but a living womb. Carrying a fetus for such a lengthy term is as good as a death sentence for a female Drukhari. She is too vulnerable to her enemy's attacks, and she is of no use on a raid. In Camorra, only the most powerful Drukhari, who are able to surround themselves with the best protection, can allow themselves such an extravagance. Farkaza Aziriesh, poisoner of Azdrujar, and Shaimish's elect, was one such exalted leader of the Drukhari. The result was worth the effort. Are you sure? I must adapt to my new circumstances, and to this bucket that you monkey call a void ship. These alloy bulkheads, so primitive. Then go. I will find something to amuse myself with.